Hello. Welcome to Bold and Gold's virtual orientation. My name is Robin Childs, and I'm part of the Camping and Outdoor Leadership admin team. And the admin team is here to support you through the process of enrollment and while you're on course. I would like to do the land acknowledgement now. For 500 generations they flourished until newcomers came. Much was lost, much was devalued, but much was also hidden away in the hearts of the deep-possessed. This is an excerpt from Native Americans of the Pacific Northwest. And I read that. I want to acknowledge that we live and work on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people, and our Bold and Gold adventures will explore the lands of the indigenous people of the Pacific Northwest, which are now designated as national parks. It is incumbent upon us to be mindful of this and be good stewards of the land. We will practice leave no trace principles to protect these natural spaces while we play, learn, and grow. I also want to talk about the equity statement of the Y of Greater Seattle, and I'll read that to you. The Y actively promotes a culture free from bias and injustice. We are dedicated to removing institutional and systemic barriers that result in oppression and racism. We will be accountable to marginalized communities for creating equitable and sustainable environments where social justice is woven into every facet of our programs, and by caring for our communities in a culturally versatile and respectful manner. I wanted to read that to you because in our Bold and Gold programs, as part of the Y of Greater Seattle, we live by this principle, and I want everyone to be mindful of that. Today is an overview of what we will be doing this evening. So the next slide, please. Okay. We will go over the mission of Bold and Gold. You will meet key staff, summer staff. We'll talk about preparing for your adventure, our risk management protocols and policies, what you can expect pre-trip, while you are out on trip, and post-trip. We'll talk about the admissions process and the package that you'll have to fill out, the packets. And there will be time for questions. So there is a Q&A function, and we would like you to use that. Also, the information that we are providing this evening will be or is in the Family Corner that's online, and this evening is being recorded. The next slide, please. What we wanted to do is we're going to have Jeff talk about how Bold and Gold fits into our branch of camping and outdoor leadership. Jeff?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Esseltine. I'm the director for our outdoor leadership programs, including Bold and Gold. So as you can see on this graphic, our outdoor leadership team is one of the 3 sites that's part of our camping and outdoor leadership branch here as the Y of Greater Seattle. Camp Orkila and Camp Coleman are our traditional resident camps, and then outdoor leadership is an urban-based set of programs that is based here in Seattle, serves throughout King County and the rest of Washington as well. And we're here tonight to talk a bit about Bold and Gold, boys and girls outdoor leadership development. So Bold and Gold has been offering amazing outdoor experiences for young people for over 15 years. We believe in the power of the outdoors as a tool to help all people develop confidence, courage, community awareness, emotional intelligence, and wonder. And ultimately, our goal is to bring together an intentional, diverse group of young people to develop their skills as leaders, build community, and challenge themselves. And we do this through two main program models. So the first is our partnership programs, which predominantly happen during the school year. So that's work with schools, community-based organizations, nonprofits, and really focuses on building custom programs to reach these goals. So that might be single-day outdoor experiences all the way through week-long outdoor adventures. And that might be hiking, snowshoeing, kayaking, rock climbing, backpacking. And then the second part of that model is the summer programs, which we're here to talk about tonight. So those are generally open enrollment so that families and young people can sign up for the trips of their choosing. And they're 1 to 3 week long immersive outdoor experiences designed to hit all of those things that I talked about at the top. Those programs are predominantly going to be backpacking, rock climbing, and mountaineering. And they're going to explore some of the most beautiful places that we have to offer here in Washington. And the additional component I want to mention, because we're going to talk about it a bit tonight, is our LIT, or Leader in Training program, which is a mentorship opportunity for young people who have previously participated in our program. So with that, I'm going to turn this over so that our staff can take a moment to introduce themselves, since we'll be talking tonight about a variety of different topics. So I will start with Jordan.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here and learning more about our Bold and Gold programs this summer. My name is Jordan Bright, he, him pronouns. I'm the summer program director for Bold and Gold, so I oversee all of our trips that you're here to learn about. And I've been with the Y for over 15 years. I started as an environmental educator and summer camp counselor. I worked as a sea kayak instructor for YMCA Camp Orkyla before working with them in their wilderness programs, and made the jump to Bold and Gold a few years ago, where I had been working diligently to make all of these trips happen. And I'm super excited to see all of your young people this summer go on really fantastic adventures. And I'll turn it over to Catherine.
Great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Catherine. I use she, her pronouns. I am the partnerships program director. So as Jeff mentioned, I primarily work with schools and nonprofits, other groups to develop custom programming that during the school year mostly. And I've been with Bold and Gold since about 2014 in various capacities, instructor, a supervisor, and now as a director. So it's a great program and I'm glad you're here. So I'll go to Carly.
Great. Hello, everyone, and good evening. Thank you again so much for being here. My name is Carly Rosser. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm also a program director with Bold and Gold. My job primarily is helping us get ready for summer and operate the programs that we're doing out of the Cascade People Center. I've been with the Y for 6 years now, starting as a program instructor in outdoor education and kind of bopping around and doing some sea kayaking and assistant directing at Camp Orkyla before moving over to Bold and Gold as an instructor and then the operations supervisor. So excited to be here. Really enjoy working with this program and helping young people to engage in the outdoors. It really is a special and unique way that we can connect with young people, and very excited to chat about it.
And with that, I'll start talking about the rest of our staff that folks will be working with this summer. One of the voices you'll hear very soon is Cameron Donnelly as well, who joined us as a leader in training this last summer and will be joining us as a logistics coordinator this year. But our instructors come from all over the place. They are folks who are very skilled in working with youth. That is kind of one of the first things that we are looking for in a good trip lead, our educators. So many of them work as classroom teachers during the year, are coming to us from other youth serving wilderness or outdoor ed organizations, other summer camp or wilderness programs, and are folks who are really excited to build incredible skills working with youth. Beyond that, we're also looking for really capable and confident outdoor leaders. So our folks have certifications like single pitch instructor. It's a many-hour course where folks will learn how to safely facilitate rock climbing experience for young people. Many will have hiked long trails across the United States, including the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail. Lots of folks grew up here in the Northwest and are very familiar with the areas that we travel, the Olympic Coast and the North Cascades. And one of the things that I get most excited about our staff in the summer is many of them have worked with Bold and Gold in the past. Looking at our staff team this summer, just about half of our instructors and staff will have either been Bold and Gold participants or Bold and Gold staff people. And many of them complete our full leadership progression, which we're going to hear a little bit more about as we talk about our leader and training experience. And I think that because they are familiar with the program, because they are familiar with kind of the mission and principles and curriculum pieces behind Bold and Gold, they can really carry on the things that made those trips great for them and make those trips even greater for the participants that they're working with. And there's a particular staff member that I'm really excited to highlight. Before Bold and Gold was the program that it was today, it used to be a program called Passages Northwest, and there was a really incredible young participant named Rosemary Saul who learned how to climb with Passages. And right now, Rosemary is actually at Mount Everest Base Camp and is going to be looking to summit Mount Everest, to make a summit attempt. When she's completed that, she'll be coming back to lead some backpacking programs with us. So some really accomplished, really incredible young people, old people, all sorts of people who are going to be leading trips this summer. And I kind of talked a little bit about some of their certifications, but this is something I find to be really valuable, really important. All of our instructors also have some really cool specialized medical training as well. When Bold and Gold sends trips out in the field, all of our staff are trained at the at least wilderness first aid level. That's a 16-hour medical training with a special emphasis on how to keep people safe and healthy outdoors. And on every program, at least one staff member will also be a wilderness first responder. That's an 80-hour training. We've also been watching a larger growing number of our staff members obtain even higher levels of certification for that. So on our staff, we'll also have folks trained in mental health first aid, folks who are emergency medical technicians or wilderness EMTs, folks who are just excited to bring lots of skills, lots of know-how, all sorts of things that are going to really keep our young people engaged this summer, help keep them safe and healthy and thriving in the outdoors. Those are our trip leaders. I can't wait for your young people to meet the folks that they'll be adventuring with and to talk a little bit more about what they're going to be doing out on their trip. I'll send it over to Catherine to talk about our curriculum.
Great, thanks, Jordan. So the Bold and Gold curriculum is really leadership focused. So, it's in our name, leadership development. So we want everyone to come out of the end of their trip feeling confident, capable, and a little bit more, in touch with their voice as a leader. This picture here is our staff members, the trip leaders that Jordan was just mentioning on their staff training trip. Relaxing by fire, but also our training trip models that of a Bold and Gold backpacking trip where they also go through a typical day and participate in the same curriculum that your young people will as well. So one thing that we do as a part of our curriculum is a rotation of jobs each day. So you'll be assigned a job. It might be leader of the day where you get to hike in the front of the line, hold the map, be the person who calls when we should have a break, when it's okay to start walking again, and generally keep the morale up of the group. Every person will get an opportunity to be the leader of the day at least once on their trip. Another job you might have is photographer. So we have a group camera that we bring on the trip and everyone gets to rotate being the person who takes the picture for that day. At the end of your trip, when you come back, the day after, your instructors will upload the pictures to a shared photo site that you'll get the link to. You might be the water wizard, which is a person who makes sure we're all staying hydrated on our trip, and so we can be strong and healthy each day. There's a variety of other jobs that vary from trip to trip. Those are just a few examples. You will also learn all of the wilderness skills you need to be successful. So that can be from setting up a mid, which is the shelters that we sleep in. You can see a mid in orange in the background of this photo. They're just kind of like a simple tent. So you learn how to set up a mid. You will learn how to read a map and compass, perhaps, how to pack your pack. You'll get really good at packing your backpack every day, so the weight is balanced and it's most comfortable for you. Any other skills, if you're on a climbing trip, you learn how to belay and proper climbing technique, all of that you can look forward to. The last thing I'll mention is that each night we have a tradition called Courage Circle, which is our evening activity. The curriculum varies each night depending on the goals of your instructors and the groups. A couple examples would be, one I like is one called Fears in the Fire, where you all kind of think about maybe something you're nervous about, something coming up in your life, and write it down on a piece of paper and guide it through an activity to kind of think about that fear or that thing you're nervous about and brainstorm as a group what you can do to maybe alleviate some of that anxiety. And it's facilitated a number of different ways, but that's one I really like. Another activity that you might do at Courage Circle that I really like is called The Story of Your Name, where you get to share anything you want about your name, its significance, maybe a nickname, anything like that, your family history. And it's just a great way to get to know the other people in your group and maybe learn something that you wouldn't have normally brought up in conversation. So those are just a couple examples of some of the curriculum that you might learn about. I'm going to hand it over to Cameron, who's going to talk a little bit about a specific program that we have called the Leader in Training program. So Cameron.
Hi everyone, my name is Cameron. I use she, her pronouns, and this is my 4th year being involved with the Y. My first year I was a participant, and I kind of just threw myself into it, and I did a 3-week backpacking trip with almost no experience, and I loved it. So I came back, and then I was an LIT, and then I loved it, and then I was an LIT again last year, and now this year I'll actually be working officially with the Y, which is really exciting. But I'm just going to talk about my LIT experience right now. I'm the person wearing the blue hat in this picture, so I've done it. It's been a really good trip. What usually happens is you do a 1-week mentor trip. So that's what this picture is from. You meet up with 2 instructors and a couple of other LITs, and you learn how to lead your peers and how to work together as a group and how to teach others to do that. And then after that week is done, you'll later go on a 1-week mentor trip. So I've done mentor trips in the Cascades, and last year I did one on the beach of the Olympic Peninsula, and so that was really fun. And you get to lead a group of middle schoolers, all your people. I get to help lead them, and that's really, really rewarding to watch them all grow. And I think it's a really good program for your personal development as a leader and as a person, but I also think it's just such a good idea to help other people grow themselves. That is most of what I have to say, but feel free to ask questions at the end if you have anything else for me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Cameron. Great. I'm going to talk about a typical day on a Bold and Gold trip. So each day will kind of follow a similar format, similar schedule. You and your group will get into a routine throughout your time together. And it might look different than what I'm about to explain, but here's what a typical day might look like. So you wake up, you're in your mid, you'll be at whatever campsite you hike to that day. Wake up time might be around 7 a.m. depending on what your day is like ahead of time. Breakfast, a typical breakfast might be granola with dried fruit, and We bring powdered milk if you want a little liquid. Sometimes people just want to eat it dry, maybe some peanut butter or sun nut butter in there, depending if you want a little extra protein. And then you'll break down your campsite. So breaking down those mids that I showed and packing up your packs and getting ready to hike for the day. A typical mileage for a day will range between 3 and 5 miles with, you have your heavy pack on, but the good thing is it gets lighter each day. So it'll only be heaviest on your first day, and every day after, as you and your group eat through all the food that you're carrying, your pack does get lighter. Yeah, the mid, as I mentioned, was the shelter that we saw on the 2 slides ago. So the orange thing, the things that you're sleeping in. And so as you are getting ready, you'll hike throughout the day, you'll get maybe your job assignments. At some point, you will stop for your lunch along the trail. And a lunch might be tortillas. You can have the option of peanut butter and jelly on your tortilla, or maybe some cheese and summer sausage, something like that. With every meal that I mentioned, there are, we can accommodate for dietaries and allergies, which Carly will touch upon in a few slides. So everything that I'm mentioning, it can be changed to accommodate whatever you might need. So after you've had your lunch and a little bit of a break, you'll continue hiking on to your next campsite. And once you get there, it might be time for maybe a little rest time, take your packs off. This is when I like to just sit down and put my sleeping pad out or sit on a log where I'm not going to be walking around and air my feet out for a few minutes before putting my camp shoes on and just kind of generally take a breath. And then you will set your campsite up for that night. So putting up those mids again, the shelter tents, and kind of getting everything situated, getting your sleeping pad and sleeping bag out, getting ready. After the campsite is set up, there might be a little free time depending on your day. Maybe this is the time where your group goes down to, if you're camping near a lake, there might be some time to swim or kind of relax by the water, or maybe some time to read your book, anything like that. At some point, you will start getting ready for dinner. And a typical dinner might be burritos, one of my personal favorites. I like it because it's customizable to whatever I'm feeling like I want to add in that day. And maybe you'll have a dessert of Oreos, also one of my favorites. After dinner, you'll get that all cleaned up and situated, and then it will be time for Courage Circle, which is the evening activity I mentioned earlier. So that's when you might do your story of your name activity or something else. During that time, we also like to save some space to give appreciations to people in our group, maybe someone who helped you out that day. You might do rosebud thorns, so your high, your low, and something you're looking forward to. Just general reflection on how the trip is going and how it's going to go. So after Courage Circle, then you'll get all snuggled down in your sleeping bag, maybe some time to chat in the mid, and lights out. So that is what your day looks like. Once per trip, at least once, you will have a rest day. So that is a time when you will wake up and you won't have to break down your campsite and hike to the new campsite. You will just stay at that one all day. Rest days are really important on a backpacking trip because it's a good time to mentally and physically just relax. And it's also a really good time to do some team building as a group. When you're out on the trail all day, sometimes you just don't get an opportunity to talk to everyone in your group or really, do the team building that you would want to do because you're focused on getting to your next destination, or maybe you're just kind of in the zone. So rest day activities, this is typically a day when your group might cook some more elaborate meals for breakfast or lunch or dinner, so more than just the quick grab and go meals. This picture here shows a one of my favorite team building activities. I just realized I did know what they were doing, called like Magic Path, or I don't know, there's a million names for it. On a rest day, you also might go for a hike without packs on. So maybe there is another cool lake nearby or a good view, and you as a group decide you want to go for a hike without packs on, and that's a really nice break. This also might be a day when you do a little bit longer of solo time, which is an activity we do every day. It's a time when you, in a safe way, get to sit somewhere in the woods by yourself and reflect in a place where your instructor can still see you, but it's your time to, you're with people all the time. So we want to make sure that we have solo time at least once per day, and on your rest day, it might be a little longer. So that is what your rest day looks like. And up next, we will have Carly with some info about Leave No Trace.
Awesome. Thanks, Catherine. So Leave No Trace is a set of 7 principles that help folks engage with the outdoors in a sustainable way. So by following these Leave No Trace principles, our trips are helping to ensure that they're protecting the spaces that we're recreating in while also connecting with the natural world. The way that looks within our programs is generally we are helping our young people to plan and prepare by doing gear checks with groups to help ensure that everyone has the appropriate gear that they need for their adventure. Our instructors are also helping pack food based kind of on group size so that we're making sure that we're producing less waste as we're going through our trip and we're not bringing anything extra. We also have specific permits that allow us to operate in different wilderness areas. And so that kind of helps us to make sure that we're traveling and camping in the areas that we need to be so that we're not overusing a certain space. A big one for our programs are making sure that we're disposing of waste properly. Mostly that means packing out all garbage that we have with us. So we pack it in, we pack it out so that we're not leaving anything in the beautiful spaces that we're visiting. And then that includes any waste from our bodies. And so using privies and established bathrooms when possible, and instructors going through that with our participants so that they know how to safely keep themselves clean and use the bathrooms when they are out in the wilderness or at our front country campgrounds. Another principle is leave what you find. So when we're out and about, sometimes we might find something that's really cool. And we want to both celebrate that and show everyone in our group that you found this cool thing. Maybe it is a rock or what's a good example? Maybe a flower, something of that sort. But we also want to make sure that we're leaving those items behind so that other folks who are coming behind us can also see that item. We really like to use pictures as a good way to remember these things as we find them. And so we encourage our participants to take pictures of the things that they see that they want to remember, as well as their peers as they go throughout this trip, so that when they get back and those photos are uploaded, they can see each other doing all of these fun things that they did on their trip. Campfires are something that our programs do. When we're having campfires, we want to make sure that we're really minimizing those campfire impacts. For our programs, that typically means keeping campfires pretty small. We don't necessarily have them every single night, and we only do campfires when they're allowed. So if there's a fire ban because it's really dry, then we don't do fires. We always have our stoves to help us cook and have a warm meal. And then we find other ways to have a fun kind of campfire-like experience, even if maybe we're not having a fire itself. The last 2 Leave No Trace principles are pretty similar. One is respecting wildlife, and one is being considerate of others. So we respect wildlife by properly storing food and making it so that wildlife can't get into our food. When wildlife gets a hold of human food, that can affect their behaviors and patterns. And so we want to make sure that we're storing our food so that 1, our trips have food because that's important and they like that. And 2, keeping it away from animals because that's not healthy for those animals. We also want to make sure that we're giving wildlife space. And so maybe looking from a distance, and again, using those cameras to kind of take note of that experience, but also making sure that we're giving that wildlife space that it needs. The last principle for Leave No Trace is being considerate of others. We're really large groups that are kind of using the outdoors in a way, and while that's really positive and a benefit we find, we also want to make sure that we're observing quiet hours at campgrounds and when we're around other people. So typically we kind of have like a lights out at 10 o'clock where we slowly wind down the day and make sure that we're, one, giving ourselves enough time to rest our bodies, but two, being considerate of other campers that might be in the areas that we're in. We're also trying to be really thoughtful about where our groups are taking breaks. So maybe my group wants to pull aside for a quick water break. We would do that not necessarily on the middle of the trail, and making sure that we can still have space for others to walk by. A lot of these things are, I like to think of as a spectrum. So we always want to make sure that we're keeping in mind, how are we leaving no trace? Like, are we operating in this area so that the folks that come behind us, maybe they didn't even know that we were here, because we want to keep these spaces beautiful and accessible for others for many years to come. Some of our trips even go a step further and perform service projects during their experience. Powerful Gifts is a great example. That's the group that you can see here. And so what Powerful Gifts does is they do a service project. I believe this one was a beach cleanup on the Olympic coast, but they're working with their instructors and with a liaison from Olympic National Park to complete this project, so that they're kind of taking that next step of not just leaving a trace, but also help cleaning up some things that have happened previously in the park. So Leave No Trace, it's really important. It's something that all of our groups learn about and go through with the rangers of each of the national parks that we recreate in. And it's something that we find really important to keep in mind as we're going into these spaces to help keep them beautiful for years to come. And that being said, gear and packing is a really important aspect. And as I mentioned, being prepared for our trips. I'd say gear and packing are one of the most frequent questions that we get. It can be really overwhelming as you're thinking about, wow, want to have everything I need, and maybe you're carrying these items on your back for up to 14 days. That's a long time to keep the same items with you. So general things to know about gear and packing. Our packing lists live in the admissions packet in the summer program's handbook. So the packing lists are specific to the type of trip, just because different trips have different needs. For example, if I'm going on a 2-week backpacking trip in the North Cascades, I might need different items than if I were doing a 1-week climbing trip at Mount Erie, where it's called front country camping and you're staying in an established campground and not like moving each day. So the different packing lists are labeled with the trip type. For example, it'd say 1-week backpacking, 2-week backpacking, as well as a list of the trips that applies for. In general, each group will check in for that first morning, and they'll meet their group mates, they'll meet their instructors, do some name game intro type things, and then they'll come into the Cascade People Center and do what we call a gear check. We do gear checks so that we can ensure that every single participant, and honestly every single staff member, has what they need to be successful when they're in the outdoors. And what that looks like is we have folks kind of bring what they have with them, and we go through the packing list for that group. During this time, our instructors and logistics staff may ask participants to leave an item behind if it's extra, or maybe it won't serve the purpose that they need in the outdoors. Anything that's left behind in the Cascade People Center will be stored securely in a locked cabinet with folks' names on it, so they don't have to worry about it, and then it'll be there when our participants come back, so that maybe they have then that cozy warm jacket ready for them to change into when they get back to the Cascade People Center. Something that we really pride ourselves on and really focus a lot on is having a really strong gear library. we have an extensive library of gear that folks can borrow from. We don't want folks to go out and look at this list and think, oh, we need to go find all of these items. Try and look through closets, see what you have. You'd be surprised how many things are on that list that maybe might look familiar, just in a different name. So for example, one thing that we ask for on the list is a synthetic t-shirt. Sports jerseys work great for that. And if you end up not having that, that's okay, because we have plenty of gear at the Cascade People Center that folks are able to borrow. The way that we can request that, it's really helpful if folks are able to request that, and that's done through the registration process. If you've already filled that out, that's okay. And you need to make changes, you're able to make changes. If you have any questions, please contact us and we can help you through that process. If, for example, you maybe miss something that you want to borrow, that's also okay. We'll still have it available for folks to borrow the day of that they leave for trip. There are other pieces of gear in addition to personal gear. Technical gear such as climbing harnesses or helmets, as well as any group gear. So those pyramid sleeping shelters that Catherine was talking about, and any cooking gear, those are all provided by Bold and Gold. So you don't need to worry about bringing those items. The other thing to think about is that when we're in the outdoors, we might need to think about the types of clothes that we're using in a little bit of a different way. I always say I have this lovely sweatshirt. It is so cozy, it's so warm, and it's truly the best piece of clothing in my closet. And it's something that I probably wouldn't bring backpacking with me, because if it gets wet or if it got sandy, it would be really heavy and it would take a really long time to dry. And so while that sweatshirt is great for wearing in the city, it's not the most appropriate gear to bring with me backpacking. And so when thinking about those personal items and those packing lists, we do talk about specific types of fabrics, and that's kind of the reasoning why. It doesn't mean that that cotton sweatshirt is bad. It just means that it's not necessarily serving the purpose that I need it to. And one reason for that is that we're carrying a lot of items in those backpacks for a backpacking trip. You can see in this photo, like, you know, there might be a sleeping bag at the bottom, and then you have all your clothes, and then there's a pot that you're help carrying, and then maybe there's some food, and it all adds up really quickly. Our participants are carrying on average about 40-pound backpacks, which are pretty heavy. It depends on the group. It depends on the age group of our participants, but they are hefty packs. And so it is important to think about that, like, this is not an ultra light program. Like, we're not carrying super light packs and we're not hiking really fast, because we are carrying stuff for a group. And two, we want to really make sure that we're thoughtful about the types of and amount of personal clothing that we're bringing on the trip. So that's what our instructors are there to help with when they go through that gear check. And then I really encourage folks to stick to that packing list. So don't bring extras. I know it sounds really hard to only have maybe 1 or 2 t-shirts for an entire week. And you'll be really happy that you're not bringing 4 or 5 t-shirts by the end of that week, when you're feeling how heavy that pack starts to feel. One thing that I like to encourage folks is, especially with kind of optional items, really think hard about whether or not that's something that is going to make a difference for you. A great example is books. Maybe you love reading. I know I am someone who I find it really helpful to have a book at the end of the day to kind of decompress, maybe have for a couple of moments in the afternoon if there's some downtime to just read a chapter, and that feels great. And being thoughtful about the size of that book. Bringing book 7 of Harry Potter with 2 chapters left, maybe not the best idea, because then you're just going to be carrying that book around with you for a long period of time. If you're someone who knows that you don't want to read, then don't bring a book. And so know yourself, trust yourself, and stick to the packing list, because you will be very thankful that you're not lugging around more than you need to in that case. With that, food is another big part of what makes up our pack weight. And so when thinking about food, we love food. We get excited about it. You can see it on their faces in this photo, how excited they are about that. I would believe it's a curry dish. And there are some things to consider when thinking about the food that we're bringing on our trips. One, we're cooking for a large group of people, large as in 10 people, and we're doing that on camp stoves. So you can see in this photo, there's a pot, and underneath that pot, there's actually a tiny stove. Those stoves, you can't really adjust the temperature that much, and so we're working with limited technology, you could say. They're really great because they're small and lightweight, but we have less options for how we can cook food. So thinking about all of that, the way that we pack food out is by thinking about food that is quick to cook, it's filling, and it's lightweight to carry. That means that we carry a lot of dehydrated food, or food that's been kind of had all of its water taken out. And we carry a lot of food that is calorically dense. So for the size and the weight, it has a lot of calories. An example of this would be peanut butter. Peanut butter has a lot of calories for like 2 tablespoons, and so it gives us more energy for less amount of food. That would be different than, say, lettuce, which you would have to eat a lot of lettuce to get the same amount of calories as you would if eating peanut butter. So those are some things that we consider when we're planning meals for our groups. And knowing that depending on the trip, this might look a little bit differently. Our front country trips, so our Sea to Summit trips and our Tahoma trips, those are some examples of trips that might be staying at a campground for the entire week. And so they kind of have like a base camp. They set up their camp, they do day trips from there, and they're coming back to the same campsite every single night. They're able to have access to a cooler, and therefore they might have some more flexibility in the types of food that they're able to bring. Whereas our backcountry programs, like a 1-week backpacking trip or a 2-week backpacking trip, those programs are starting from one place, and each night, aside from those nights where they have that rest day, they're going to be moving their campsite. And so they're kind of carrying everything on their backs with them in their backpacks. So all of that in mind, we really aim to have food that is tasty and filling and warm, and know that one big piece of these trips is that we're asking participants to try new things and maybe challenge themselves in certain ways. And for some of our participants, the most challenging part of this experience is the food, just because it's different than what they're used to. You're used to be able to maybe walking into a kitchen and opening up a refrigerator and grabbing some milk and maybe some cereal. And that looks a little bit different when we're out backpacking or out in the backcountry. And so my ask and the ask that we have for our participants is to give something a try. You don't know necessarily that you won't like it until you try it. And you might be really surprised by how much you really enjoy curry and rice when at home maybe you don't really love that dish, but sometimes it tastes better when you're camping. And so really thinking about like how you can challenge yourself and how you can make sure that you're showing up and giving stuff a try, even if it's different than what you might typically eat at home. Examples of some meals that we often have, Catherine gave a couple, but oatmeal is a really common breakfast that we use, granola. Often trips will do a kind of fancier breakfast on days that they have a layover day because they might have a little bit more time. So that could look like doing some pancakes or maybe some cheesy hash browns. But basically, breakfasts are typically pretty quick, pretty filling, and are aimed to just kind of get folks ready and out of their campsites. Lunches, we often do what we call a trail lunch, which usually is like a tortilla and maybe some options that you can put on it. So that might be peanut butter or some butter and jelly. That could be peanut butter or some butter and honey. It could also be like sausage and cheese or hummus and cheese, maybe some tuna fish. I'd say there's a lot of flexibility in kind of what lunches look like depending on people's preferences and kind of depending what's packed and what's brought out that day. Typically, groups do an afternoon snack, which often looks like pretzels or goldfish or some type of snacky, we call them carb snacks, but some type of snacky thing that looks like that. And then there's also always an option to have some like dried fruit or any additional kind of snack item if folks are still hungry. And then dinners are typically our hot meals for the day. That could look like a rice dish with maybe like curry on top. A kind of pho version of pho is a really popular one with rice noodles and like a broth and some kind of add-ins to that. Pasta with red sauce is a common meal, sometimes macaroni and cheese. So meals that might sound similar or maybe sound a little bit different. But again, since we're cooking them on smaller stoves, even if they maybe sound familiar, they might look a little bit different than you're used to. As far as dietary restrictions and food allergies go, it's really important, one, that we want to make sure that we are bringing the appropriate food for folks and making it so that people are feeling comfortable and confident in what they're eating, because it's really important that we are eating and have options for food when we're out there to kind of keep our energy levels up. One way that you all can help with that is by making sure that dietary restrictions are told to us, and that is done through the Camp Care form that is sent out in the spring. So it should be either in your inboxes or soon that you'll be receiving that. And with that Camp Care form, that's kind of giving an overview of just general like medical information of participants as well as those dietary needs and allergies. And this includes the severity. So for example, maybe I am lactose intolerant, so I can't eat dairy. There's a really big difference between being really allergic to dairy and maybe not being able to eat milkshakes. If I have a lactose intolerance, maybe I can still eat some types of dairy, and then if I have an allergy, I can't have that at all. And so that type of severity is really helpful for us to know so we can plan accordingly. If you have any questions at all, please reach out. Our logistics team want to help and want to be able to answer those. And so they will reach out with if they have any questions about that information, but also know that if you have questions or would like to know more about kind of our packing process and what that looks like, we are happy to answer those things. And with that, I will turn it over to Jeff.
Thanks, Carly. So I'm going to take a little bit of time here to talk about our risk management and what that's going to look like this summer. Bold and Goals is extensive risk management strategies that really stem from a few different tools. The first is our EAP or Emergency Action Plan, which guides our response in the case of an accident or incident in the field while folks are away. The next is our site-specific emergency information, which is ultimately a list of resources and the tools that we'll need to assure that we have the local resources and support from other organizations, lands managers, search and rescue, etc., to support or address an issue quickly. And then the final part is the 24/7 on-call system that we have set up anytime there are groups or a program in the field. And that includes both a medical and a mental health advisor to help support the work that we're doing and support our staff and support our participants. Within that, there are a number of different layers that kind of inform what we do and how we manage risk in the field. So the first is our training. As Jordan shared earlier, all of our staff are at a minimum trained in wilderness first aid. Each of our trips will have 2 instructors, and one of those will also be trained as a wilderness first responder. And in addition to that wilderness medicine training, all of our staff take part in an extensive Bold and Gold training that covers child abuse prevention, wilderness skills, and risk management. The next layer in this is prevention, which is basically monitoring the health and well-being of our participants and our staff, which is paramount. And that looks like instructors taking the time to check in with each participant every day to see how they're doing physically and emotionally. The single best thing we can do is be proactive about addressing issues like blisters, headaches, upset stomach, dehydration, etc. Because the sooner we pick up on those things, the sooner we can address them and we can prevent things from getting worse over time. And opening that communication, modeling that for our participants is the best way to do that. The next layer of that risk management resources is really the resources that are in the field with our instructors and with our groups. So while our trips are in the field, the majority of them are going to be outside of cell service and some distance from services. So to ensure that we can effectively communicate, each group carries a satellite phone, and each group has scheduled check-in calls over the duration of their trip. And during that time, they're going to share with us updates about how they're doing it as an instructor team, how the participants are doing, might share updates about campsites, trails, water resources, etc. And we're also going to share information with them about weather, logistics, what we're hearing from other groups in the area, or maybe the National Park Service has an update on something that's going on. Those satellite phones are a really crucial link to ensure that we have consistent communication with those groups, and they're designated for staff use only. And then in addition to those satellite phones, each of our trips goes out with a well-stocked and extensive first aid kit. So that's going to include basic supplies, Band-Aids, etc., as well as over-the-counter medications and epinephrine. And that's designed to align with all of the wilderness first aid training that we've referenced earlier to ensure that they have the resources there to help treat and support a young person. And then finally, that last layer is really the base camp resources that we have available to us here in Seattle. So in the event that there's an accident or incident in the field, our instructors are going to call that on-call network via the satellite phone. They're going to talk to a course director. They're going to pull in the leadership team, which are the folks that are on this call, and they're going to work together to ensure that they have the support to develop a plan and address the issue and ensure that everyone is safe and taken care of. The last thing that I want to really highlight as part of this risk management plan is the role that families play in this. You know your young people best. And oftentimes, if a young person is struggling out there, maybe it's been a really hot few days or they've developed some blisters, we may reach out to you to ask for some advice or tips or tricks about how we can encourage and support your young person. You know them better than we do, and we really want to use you as a resource because, again, proactively managing this, making sure that they have that support is really a crucial part to ensuring that everyone has a successful and enjoyable experience. As we now enter our third summer of Bold and Gold operations during the COVID pandemic, I also want to take a moment to talk a bit about what our protocols are going to look like for this summer based on the guidance from Washington State's Department of Public Health. So thankfully, many of the practices that are ingrained in the bedrock of the Bold and Gold program really align with the things that we have needed to do to address COVID. So for example, small groups. All of our groups are capped at no more than 12 people. Commitment to hygiene. It's something we really emphasize not only on day one, but throughout those trips. When we are in the wilderness, it's really crucial that we are washing our hands, that we are practicing leave no trace principles. We're using the hand sanitizer when we need to, that we're cleaning and sanitizing our equipment for cooking. So all those things are super important. And ultimately, we're outdoors for the vast majority of our time, which really aligns with what we know about the spread of COVID. So specifically for this summer, there are a few things that we are going to be implementing in alignment with the state guidance. So the first is a continuation from last summer, which is at check-in upon arrival, each participant will need to present proof of vaccination or a negative PCR test that was completed in the previous 72 hours. I'll also note that we will have rapid tests on site, but our preference is for folks to come with the results previously just because it will be easier and it will speed things up, but that is a resource that we'll have available. And then last accommodation that we're really going to be making this summer is with masks. So one of the things that's been very successful is trying to minimize opportunities for our groups to cross paths and the increase in potential for spread of COVID through those interactions. So in alignment with that guidance, when our groups are inside our base camp here at the Cascade People Center, they'll be asked to wear masks, and then when they're sharing vehicles with other groups, so if they're traveling by bus. Beyond that, once the groups are with themselves or outdoors, they will no longer need to wear masks. That won't be a continuation of what we're doing. So our hope is that folks will bring those as part of their gear packing, but we'll definitely have them on site as well. Thankfully, these strategies have been successful for us over the last 2 summers, and I'm thankful that we can continue to just kind of ingrain many of them in what we're already doing. Jordan, I believe I'm going to turn it over to you next to talk a little bit about some of the places that we visit.
Excellent. Been looking forward to this. Golden Gold goes all across Washington State, and we see some of the most beautiful natural sites that can be found in Washington. The first one I'm going to talk about is Olympic National Park. In Olympic National Park, we travel both along the coast, and then also one of our courses will also go into the Olympic interior. And when I talk about the Olympic coast, I'm talking about lots of different things. We travel from Shy Beach, just north or just south of Nia Bay, all the way down to Oil City, which is just north of Kaleluk on those maps. That whole stretch of coast is about 40 or 50 miles, and it's got lots of different types of terrain. Lots of boulders, lots of overland crossings, lots of beautiful sandy beaches with beautiful tide pooling, sunsets when the weather is nice, and all of our groups will really get to experience a truly very magical place to be. Our 2-week programs will travel kind of the longest lengths of coast, where they'll either cross the Ozette River or cross the Hoh River as part of their experience. And our 1-week backpacking programs are going to kind of stick to either the North Coast or the South Coast, and are really quite special. In the Olympic interior, we run a program called Heart of Nature, and this Heart of Nature program will go to 2 of kind of the most special places within the Olympic wilderness. The first week, the program will hike up to the very base of the Blue Glacier on Mount Olympus and get to see one of the tallest points in the park. And then they'll get resupplied by our friend Ernie and his team of llamas before heading up into the Seven Lakes Basin, where they'll get to see some really beautiful glacier and snow-fed lakes and get to hike out through Solduck. These courses are really, really special. And Olympic National Park is a park that we have a truly wonderful relationship with. We work really closely with a gal named Nicole, who we're about to hear from, who is one of the wilderness rangers out there and gets to meet and spend time with a lot of our Bold and Gold groups. And we're going to hear a welcome from Nicole right now.
Hi, Bold and Gold. My name is Nicole, and I'm a ranger out here at Olympic National Park. Just wanted to take a minute to tell you how excited I am that you're going to be out here visiting, or some of you will be out here visiting for a week or 2 this summer. We have an amazing park full of beautiful scenery. About 3 million people come out and visit every year, but only a smaller amount of that actually make the choice to do the hard work, put their lives on their back, and go see and be a part of the park for a week or 2 weeks. So I hope that you guys get excited also about coming out here. I hope that you love this place in the sense that you find something that just creates awe and you love it. And also I hope that you love this place and that you become inspired to take care of this park and all the amazing land areas that we have in the Northwest. Thanks, and I'll see some of you this summer.
What's really cool about Nicole is she'll actually get to greet a lot of our groups as they head out to the park. One of the things that all of our Olympic National Park trips will do is they will stop at either the Wilderness Information Center or at the Nature Bridge.
My name is Nicole.
Or the Nature Bridge Center out by Lake Quinault. And the Olympic Rangers will do a full Leave No Trace orientation with our participants and get to make some of those really cool face-to-face interactions. Nicole was going to try to shoot this video out on the coast, but she couldn't get there, so she's actually standing in front of the Elwha River, which is incredibly beautiful this time of year. But I wanted to also highlight another video that we have from Olympic. One of our programs that we run, Powerful Gifts, is a 2-week backpacking program with a specific emphasis on service. And Powerful Gifts will spend 2 weeks out on the coast, and a big part of that trip will actually be removing all sorts of plastic and other kind of litter from the beaches to help make the spaces more pristine and more enjoyable to other guests and things. This next video is not a Bold and Gold video. I will be transparent about that. It's from the Student Conservation Association, which is another really cool youth program. So you'll see some of their SCA badges. But what they are doing is very similar to what Bold and Gold does in their beach cleanup efforts and just kind of what our program looks like out on the coast. And it's just a really awesome opportunity just to see how beautiful, how rugged, how exciting it is out there. So we're going to pivot to that video next.
Oh my goodness, that's so amazing.
These past 2 weeks, we took a group of high school age volunteers. We taught them how to live in a crew and build a team. And then we asked the members to take that team and remove debris from the Olympic Coast wilderness.
It is important for people to volunteer in national parks because it just brings them one step closer to the park and to the natural world around them.
I hope that I'm helping the environment and helping everyone else see that there are beautiful places like this, and you can help out by cleaning up and allowing others to also see the beauty of it.
I don't think there's anywhere else on the planet exactly like this, and it definitely needs to be protected. I want to help make this a better place.
Last year, 60,000 hours were put in by volunteers around the park. So we are so thankful and so reliant on our volunteers. This program is so important because not only are they taking the trash off of the beach, they're inspiring people who see them to think about their choices, what kind of trash they create and what kind of trash they leave behind.
The work that you folks are doing is really crucial to the Park Service mission because it's not something that's done once, it's a continued effort that's needed. The Park Service thrives on working with volunteers. You're helping to actually preserve that wilderness character out here.
I think volunteering is important to living a full life. This trip has influenced how I'm going to live the rest of my life. I already miss the beach.
Volunteering for the national park could probably fix anyone's ruined day. Sure did fix mine.
I think that
everyone should volunteer in national parks.
So what is really cool about our Powerful Gifts program is that it does have that volunteer component, and participants on Powerful Gifts will also earn community service hours they can put towards graduation requirements or other college applications or things like that. And really, I just like that video because it sends me back to spending beautiful evenings out on the coast, which is a really fun place to be. I want to talk about North Cascades National Park next. North Cascades National Park is about 3 hours north of Seattle, and we also send a large number of backpacking programs to North Cascades as well. And we kind of travel in 3 main areas around North Cascades National Park. If you're on a 1-week backpacking trip, like Call of the North Cascades or Make a Scene or Poets and Peaks or an LIT trip, you're going to be going into the Ross Lake National Recreation Area and hiking around the shores of Ross Lake. These trips are really incredible because you get to be along the banks of Ross Lake, which is a large fjord that stretches all the way up into Canada, and is kind of flanked on either side by very steep slopes and snowy peaks and all sorts of really incredible views and vistas. And one of the things that makes these trips really cool too is often these trips will also involve a boat shuttle of some kind. So you might spend part of your trip hiking along one side of the lake, and then halfway through you'll get to come get picked up by a boat shuttle that'll ferry you across the lake You'll get a really cool boat ride, see views right along the water, and then finish your trip on the other side of the lake, which can be really special and a fun way to access some of these sites that are deeper into the park. We'll also go up into some really cool spaces kind of in the south unit of the national park. I have a puppy who's a little whiny, so I hope it's not causing too much of a distraction. Thank you for your patience there. But trips like our Cascade Challenge and our backpacking and fishing programs in the North Cascades, we'll spend some time in this unit. Our Cascade Challenge program will hike up and over Cascade Pass, right below the Sahali Arm, and through some kind of the wild spots of the park with lots of glacial basins and snow-capped peaks to see. Backpacking and fishing in the North Cascades will spend time at Dagger and McAllister Lakes, where they'll spend a night or two at each lake getting to put rods and reels together and fish for some lake trout and some other things. And our big other programs that spend time in North Cascades National Park are our 2-week American Alps or Mountains and Music program. And these programs will start kind of in that south unit of the park that you can see on that map there, and they'll hike all the way down to the top end of Lake Chelan in Stehekin, where in the middle of their trip, they'll be resupplied by the Lady of the Lake, a ferry that comes up from Lake Chelan, and then turn around and hike back to where they started, getting to spend 2 really magical weeks amongst the mountains, but then also get to be a part of the really cool Stehekin community. There's a secret bakery in Stehekin, and I would be lying if I said that some of our trips didn't get really good brownies from the bakery. So something to potentially look forward to if you are on a 2-week American Alps or Mountains and Music program. That's North Cascades, truly incredible. We can see some beautiful wildflowers down there. That trip picture looks like it was taken on one of our Cascade Challenge programs, and that could be a scene from your trip as well. Next, we'll talk about Mount Rainier National Park. This is where our Tahoma program will go. Tahoma programs, instead of being a backpacking programs where you're carrying everything with you on your back, Tahoma is really cool because you get to spend the week that you're away at a really beautiful front country campsite in or kind of right next to Mount Rainier National Park. And each day get to explore a different area of Mount Rainier. During a Tahoma program, the week that they're out, they'll visit both the Paradise and the Sunrise Lodge. They'll do a series of day hikes around the park. And what you can expect to see are some enormous old growth trees. You might get to hike up onto and be in view of the beautiful glaciers on Mount Rainier National Park, and really get to experience something that this park has to offer. Mount Rainier National Park was also one of the very first national parks in the system, so that's kind of a cool little bit of history. But I think Tahoma is also a really great way to see a lot of different areas, but then to also kind of just ease into having an outdoor experience. There'll be some rest days, opportunity to chill at the campsites, and those day hikes are a little less strenuous than having to carry around a 35 or a 40-pound pack. We also bring larger camp kitchens on those programs, so maybe the food's going to feel a bit fancier because you have bigger stoves to cook it on. And the last area I'll talk about today is Mount Erie. Mount Erie is located just outside of the city of Anacortes on Fidalgo Island, just about 95 minutes north of Seattle. And this is where our Sea to Summit program is going to go spend its time. Sea to Summit is another kind of front country camping program. Each night they'll be spending at Bayview State Park, which is on Padilla Bay. And they will commute to Mount Erie. It's about a 20-minute bus ride, and they're going to climb. As you can see here, Sea to Summit courses are all about climbing on real rock outside, and these are great opportunities to learn what that looks like. No climbing experience is required. We're just looking for folks who are excited to learn a little bit more what it looks like to climb around and scramble on some rocks. And our instructors will work with participants to teach how to belay, how to be at a climb site, how to support other folks while they're on the rope, and how to just kind of build some of those foundational and technical rock climbing skills. And climbing every day can be kind of tough. And so we also have an awesome opportunity to visit some other really cool areas up in the area. On a climbing rest day, perhaps our Sea to Summit programs might visit Washington Park, which is kind of on the very tip of Anacortes, right north of Burroughs Island, or they can drive down into Deception Pass State Park, where there's tons of hiking trails and a really awesome beach to spend time on. And yeah, that is a little bit more about where we're going to go this summer, what we're going to see, who we're going to meet, what we're going to do. All of these areas are truly beautiful, truly wonderful, have so many different things to offer our participants, and we'll make sure that each trip comes back with lots of really wonderful, lovely photos to take a look at the end. I'm going to turn it back over to Robin. Robin's going to tell us a little bit more about what to expect next and kind of get ready to close us out for the evening before we head into our Q&A.
Thank you, Jordan. So what to expect next? You can expect proactive communication from us. We believe in proactive communication, and as pertinent information about your trip becomes available, we'll be in touch with our families. That is before, during, and after. And because of this, it's important that we have reliable contact information from you. And that flow of communications two ways. We ask that you provide us with any information, any changes that have occurred since the submission of your admissions packet. And this week you should be receiving or have received an email asking you to begin to fill out that paperwork. So we would like for you to give us as much information as possible. You've heard throughout the evening how important knowing as much as we can about our participants ahead of time will help us set everyone up for success. You can also expect a call from your instructors. So 1 to 2 days prior to the trip, the instructors will call to introduce themselves and to check in with their participants and answer any questions they might have. And this is also an opportunity for guardians to get on the line. But the intent of the call is to connect with the participants. And if you go to the next slide, please. So the next thing I want to tell you is that all of our trips begin and end at the Cascade People's Center, which is located 309 Pontius Avenue North. That is about 2 blocks northwest of REI's flagship store. Parking is limited there. There is a parking garage at REI and suggest that you park there. You will also receive a welcome letter that will state the check-in time for your particular trip. The check-in times are at 8 or 9 a.m. and that will be in your check-in letter, your welcome letter. And we have a family circle that occurs. So guardians, you're not just dropping off your young person, but we ask that you stay for the opening circle. As I said, all of the trips begin and end at the Cascade People Center. We will meet at the field that is in the back of the Cascade People Center. And you'll want to go down to the field with all of your gear. You're not going to take it into the building. The participants will check themselves in. We will ask you to sign in, and then you will be directed to the area on the field where your group is meeting, and your instructors will be there waiting for you. We ask that your family, your loved ones go with you there as well. Closing circles are at 4:30, and we ask that there be a family there to welcome them back. Just like we send them off in the opening circle, we're at the closing circle, we're there to welcome them back and to hear a bit about what happened out on the trip and to celebrate their successes. We also ask that you bring a sack lunch with you for that. And then we go to the next slide, the admissions process. So as I stated, there we have the camp care forms, the medical forms. We ask that you disclose as much information as possible. You may receive a call from part of the admissions team, someone from the admissions team asking for clarification or for more information on how we can support the young person while they're out there. 2-week trips will need a physician's sign off. So there is a physician's form that we ask that you complete as well. We ask that you provide us with updated information on medications. If there are any changes in medications, and we want to know how long the young person has been on the medication. We also ask that we refrain from medication holidays. As you can imagine, we're asking a lot of young people while they're out there. Focus is really needed. So we would ask that you refrain from a medication holiday. If you are bringing over-the-counter medication, we ask, like vitamins, and we ask that it's in original packaging. We need all medication in its prescription medication and over-the-counter in its original bottle. No loose pills in Ziploc bags. We just can't accept that. The participants will not be administering their own meds. Jeff talked about the first aid kit. The instructors will carry medication and administer it to the young people, even over-the-counter medication, and will log it. If you are carrying EpiPens, we ask that you check that all in at the table. All medication will be checked in at the check-in table. If you need to carry the Epi on you, we will give it to you. Your instructors will give it to you before you go out on course. The reason we do that is that we want to make sure that everything that everyone needs gets out into the field. So we can't go to the grocery store or the pharmacy to pick up anything. So all inhalers, all EpiPens, all of that will be checked in and will be given to the participant that needs to carry it on them. And we ask that if you are bringing an inhaler, we'd like a backup just in case. For that very reason, we can't run to the pharmacy and get something else. There's also a participant questionnaire and a guardian questionnaire. Those are very important forms. That's your opportunity to give us pertinent information about what's going on in your life, what you want to get out of the trip. So that's for the guardian and for the participant. So I've noticed a trend in participants not filling out those questionnaires, and they're really a highlight. The instructors enjoy reading them. I enjoy reading them, and it's your opportunity to give us information about you and what you want out of the trip. An example is that one young person said that they were really interested in seeing the stars. So because we are this small group and the trips are tailored to the needs of the group, the instructors brought out a star chart, and there was some emphasis on looking at the stars, the unpolluted night sky. So it's your opportunity to give us that information. So I encourage you, please fill those out. We will send you reminders for that. And I think that's about the importance of filling out the paperwork and providing us with as much information as possible. And as we will follow up with questions if we have that. So thank you. All right, let's go to the next. I think it's, we'll give that to Jen, and we're going to address questions now.
Yeah, and we have some great questions. The first question I am going to give to Carly, and that is, are participants allowed to bring their own food on trip?
Yeah, that is a great question. I'd say generally we ask that participants leave any like snacks or food at home. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One is that because we are carrying such heavy packs and we want to make sure that we're not bringing any extra food that we don't need. A second piece of that is particularly on the Olympic coast, our food is stored in bear cans, which are pretty big plastic cans that help keep food secure, and they can be really tricky. It's kind of a tricky thing to fit all that food in there. You have to be really thoughtful about space in that regard. And so any additional food that's not needed, we just don't have the space for in those bear cans. I'd say the exception to this is that we ask participants to bring a bagged lunch that first day so that they can eat lunch on the bus or before they leave. And instructors, when they call, they'll ask if anyone would need or requests one from Bold and Gold. We are happy to provide that as needed. And then the second piece of that is if you have maybe a severe dietary need. So a good example would be if someone is gluten has celiac disease and cannot eat gluten, they might work with our logistics team, and maybe they know that there's a specific type of, I don't know, tortilla that works for them. And so in that case, working with our logistics team, the family might choose to send some elements of food to help support a special dietary need, but that needs to be set up ahead of time. And that, again, is done by communicating through those forms and communicating with the our logistics team about that. So I'd say generally, no, please, we ask that we don't bring any additional snacks or food. But again, there are some exceptions in that regard.
Thanks, Carly. The next question I'm going to pass to Catherine. You were talking about the mids, and how many people sleep in a mid?
Yeah, it's a great question. 3 to 4. So they're quite spacious once it's set up and, you know, all the corners are nice and taut. And it depends on just how many people are in your group, how the mid group sizes will shake out. And yeah, so 3 to 4. We also encourage people, if it's a nice clear night, we do encourage people to sleep out under the stars. So that's something you can always do. I personally try to do that as often as possible. We call it cowboy camping, and it's a really special experience to sleep out on your sleeping pad and sleeping bag with just the night sky above you.
Thanks, Catherine. The next question I'm going to pitch to Jeff. Jeff, you mentioned satellite phones, but are participants allowed to bring cell phones?
Great question. And the answer is no. So we would really love it if participants can leave their cell phones at home. If they do bring them, we're going to ask them to leave them here at our base camp, where they'll be locked up with the rest of the belongings from the trip if they get left behind. Almost exclusively where we're going to be going, there isn't going to be cell service. So bringing them just runs the risk that they could get lost or damaged. I would say the biggest question we get about that is, what about taking photos? So every trip will go out with its own group camera, and everyone will have an opportunity to take photos throughout the course of the trip. And then in a couple of days following the trip, the instructors will upload those to SmugMug, and you all will have a login so you can access and see the photos from your trip. But ultimately, we would really like to discourage folks from bringing their cell phones because we don't want them to get lost or damaged during the course of their time in the field.
Thanks, Jeff. Next question is for Jordan. Jordan, on any of the fishing trips, are participants allowed to cook and eat the fish?
That is a choice that some groups do choose to make. All of our participants will have a fishing license, and provided that they A, catch some fish, and B, the group decides that's something that they want to do and they are of the right size. Our instructors typically know how to, well, they will know how to clean and prepare all of those things. And so they might add trout to a meal. I will say it is not every group that makes that decision. I would say a more common practice on Bold and Gold programs is to catch a fish, say hi to it, and let it go back into the lake and hang out with all of the rest of its trout friends. That being said, you know, maybe your trip will make a different decision.
Thanks, Jordan. Next question is for Robin. Robin, you talked about the opening and closing circles. Can you talk about how long those typically last?
Yes, sure. It's usually about a half an hour. It will be an opportunity for the participants and their loved ones to get to know one another. We do icebreaker games. You will meet the instructors. You'll meet your course director. The You'll go over the itinerary. The course director will have a map and we'll go over the itinerary. So it's about a half an hour on both ends, the opening circle and the closing circle.
Thank you. Next question is for Carly. Carly, related to gear, how can folks let us know when they need to borrow things? Or I'm sorry, what they need to borrow, and then when do they receive those items that they'd like to borrow from us?
Yeah, so when participants were registered, there was a gear request form that may have been filled out. In that form, you can request maybe a backpack or maybe a warm jacket or boots. And then there's also information about the shoe size and general clothing size that's helpful for us in determining what might be appropriate sizes. That gear is then pulled by instructors during their prep on days when they're preparing for their trips, and it's available for participants the morning that they leave. So typically that would look like maybe they would set that aside at a station for their gear check, and then participants would be able to kind of gather it then and try it on and make sure that things fit. I think that's especially true for boots. We would have participants try them on, walk around, and make sure that they're comfortable before they leave the Cascade People Center.
Great, thank you. Jeff, this one's for you. Is there any way for parents, guardians to contact participants or for participants to contact their parents and guardians while out on trip?
Also a great question. This comes up every year. So in the Bold and Gold handbook that's available on our website and through Ultra Camp, there is an emergency 24/7 number that is monitored while anyone's in the field. So in the event of an emergency, if a family needs to get in touch with our program so they can get in touch with their young person, that's the number we want them to call. So what would happen is they would speak with our course director or our on-call staff member, and then we would be able to relay that conversation or that update to our group in the field. But there isn't a direct way for our families to call the groups in the field or vice versa. So really using that on-call system is going to be the best way to do that. And I'll just emphasize that that's really in place for emergencies. If for some reason a family is really curious about how their young person is doing, they can certainly reach out to us over the course of the trip and we can relay information from our check-in calls. But in general, there's not a way for them to directly communicate with each other. It's got to come through our on-call system because of the way the satellite phones work.
And if they'd like to get in touch with us, what phone number should they use?
Great question. I don't have that right in front of me, but I would be happy to look it up while someone else is answering another question.
Perfect, thank you. And then the last question we have is, I'll ping that to Carly. I know that we've talked about that phones are not accessible while out on trip, but can participants bring their own cameras, even if they're not connected to phones, so that they can take photos on the trip?
That is a great question. I would say typically we discourage that in that one, we have a group camera, and so we found that it's really helpful to kind of keep one camera contained. Another piece of that is, again, we're going to we get a lot of use when we're out there. And so the cameras that we send are very durable and waterproof and shockproof. And we find that when they come back, they still have sand and have been dropped and have gotten wet. And so I would discourage from bringing personal cameras just because we don't want them to be broken or damaged in any way. Occasionally, folks might bring a disposable camera. And so I think that's something that that participant could ask their instructor if they're really excited about that. We just want to make sure that it is part of a group experience and it doesn't become an exclusive thing where one participant is just taking photos. And so that's part of why we like to have the group camera, is that it's kind of passed around, and so everyone has an opportunity to use that, and then those pictures are shared online.
Great, thank you.
Jen, I've got those numbers ready now.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, so again, all of those phone numbers are on the last page of the handbook, which is up on the website, ymcaleadership.org. So the admissions number to talk about anything that's kind of going on around paperwork, payment, etc., is 206-382-5009. Our base camp facility at the Cascade People Center, which is staffed during the summer from 9 to 4:30, Monday through Sunday, so 7 days a week, can be reached at 206-659-0231. And then our emergency on-call phone, which again is monitored 24/7 when there are participants in the field, so for the duration of the summer, is 206-375-0694.
Thank you. And then Catherine, this question is for you, and it's the last question that I have here, is how many counselors will be on the trip? And can you talk about how LITs fluctuate in that space as well?
Definitely. So each trip has 2 instructors, and it may also have an LIT as a third person on that trip. So that would be middle school trips. And so, yeah, you can always rely on having 2 instructors. There may be a third person who's an LIT. And they're kind of like a liaison between the participants on the trip and the instructors. They're learning leadership skills, but ultimately all risk management decisions and kind of planning, all of that rests with the instructors.
Well, thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Jen. Catherine, can you tell me what's the average age of our instructors?
Sure. I would say, I don't know offhand, but if I were to guess a number, I would say 24. 24 to 26 is pretty typical so they're mostly out of college. Some folks are still in college, but yeah, I would say mostly kind of around that 23 to 25 time or age range.
Thank you. Well, I think if we don't have more questions, I think that brings our evening to a conclusion. And I want to thank you all for sticking with us. And if you have more questions, you can contact us at campinfo@seattleymca.org. The second email is for Corin, and you can reach out to her. And the third is myself, Robin. So we are here to support you. If you have any questions at any time, just reach out to us. Email is best, and if we need to follow up with a call, we can do that. So thank you, and we hope to see you this summer.